With so many things vying for our attention these days, it can be incredibly difficult to maintain focus for long periods of time. On this episode of Learning and Leisure, I'm going to talk about digital distraction, some of its causes and the reasons for why we might end up scrolling on our phones for as long as we do, or going down internet rabbit holes, or responding to a million emails when we just plan to do one. And I'm going to share 5 specific strategies that you can implement starting today that will help you maintain focus, keep those distractions at bay, and maintain productivity throughout your day. So let's get started. Hi, I'm Alex Mika, and I'm a PhD student studying English literature. As a student and a teacher, I'm really interested in finding the best strategies for time management to help you grow professionally, academically, and personally. Today, as we're talking about digital distraction, this is a topic that is most certainly not a stranger for me. I am quite guilty of this issue myself. Sometimes I will find myself distracted. I'll be researching something and I'll end up going down a rabbit hole that I know is not going to actually help me in the end. Sometimes they are very productive, but a lot of times they'll lead me down these pathways that take me away from the task at hand because I find the issue fascinating and I want to learn more about it, but the clock is ticking. Other times I may find myself, I'll watch another episode and then I'll start. Or I'll trick myself and say, well, it's 12:35 now. I feel like I'll be much more productive if I start at 1. And so I spend another 25 minutes doing God knows what. And these things pile up, they add up. And so the first thing that I would say when it comes to managing this issue of digital distraction, the first thing is to identify why exactly we're being distracted. Part of the answer lies outside of us, right? Social media programs are designed to keep our attention through such things as the dopamine loops in which you're scrolling and constantly searching for something novel and new that keeps your attention, and the inconsistent rewards. A lot of the videos are boring and not relevant to what I'm interested in, but then every time I get one that is a video of monkeys or an episode of Curb Your Enthusiasm, I'm going to stay and I'm going to watch a good part of that video. And so a lot of it lies outside of us, but there are also potentially underlying reasons for why we are allowing ourselves to be distracted in this particular moment. One of those might be the attempt to keep anxiety at bay, right? To distract ourselves from what we're thinking about, what kinds of tasks we need to do. Another one is the fear of starting, right? That overwhelming feeling of, well, I can't start this chapter right now. I don't even know where to begin. So I'm going to wait a little bit until I feel totally ready. Or we are addicted to notifications, and we get a notification, we're going to check it immediately and respond immediately. Maybe we're waiting for something bigger. Like, for example, a lot of times I'll find that I check my email much more than I normally would because I'm waiting to hear back from jobs and see if they want to take me in for an interview. So little things like that pile up immensely and very quickly. And so the first step is to identify what exactly is it that is getting me distracted. What apps are taking up my time and attention? What patterns do I find myself falling into? Am I going down these kinds of random rabbit holes? Am I watching these particular videos in sequential order? Do I have autoplay on? Do I want to watch another episode of Twin Peaks? Whatever it is, knowing what the behavior is and the causes for it, that, getting the notifications on email or waiting to start a task because it feels so immense that it's just insurmountable. Whatever that is, having an understanding of that is going to be a very important way to move forward, because then you can tailor some of these strategies that I'm about to share with you to your own needs and concerns. Once you've identified those patterns of behavior and you've identified maybe some of the causes for it or some of the potential causes, the next step is to then implement one or more of the following 5 strategies that I like to use for maintaining focus and staying away from getting distracted by my devices and so on. The first thing that I like to do is to declutter. I will remove everything from my desk, and this goes both physically and digitally. I will move my things away from my desk. Right now it's in sort of movie set mode for this podcast episode, but when I am actually working on something, I will remove all the notebooks that I don't need, all these little flashcards and note cards, and I just have the notebook that I'm using and working with, any books that I might need to refer to, and my computer. That is it. And I have my water and tea here. That keeps me on task, because right now what we need to do is put those horse's blinders on and keep moving forward. So the first thing I do is declutter my desk. I remove anything that's not absolutely necessary for the task at hand. The second thing I do is I then declutter my computer. I typically, I'm not going to say how many exactly I have, but I have a lot of tabs constantly open on my computer across 3 windows. I think it's close to 50. But when I'm actually going to be working on something, I try to either close as many tabs as I can, or if I find that that's impossible, I open a new window and I focus solely on that one window. I open only Google Docs if that's what I need, or the library resource to find the sources that I'm going to be downloading. But any tabs that are absolutely necessary I keep. The other ones I either bookmark or close and get rid of them, because the more tabs you have, the more your mind is divided between every single one of them. And just seeing them up there at the top of your screen can be a really distracting thing. You can see, the notification icon on Outlook. It has a little red dot. Oh, I just got an email. Or you have your other email accounts opened up, or you have YouTube or Netflix or whatever else, that siren song calling you to that next episode. Or you might have all of the various things that you need to do all opened up on various tabs, and it can be overwhelming. You might think, oh my God, which one am I going to tackle first? Pick one, and go from there. And this takes me to the second step, which is to focus on one task at a time, selecting one major task, and especially, like we've talked about numerous times on this series, break it down into the smallest possible chunk. So you're not writing a whole paper, you're writing the introduction. And I might actually make separate tabs for each section of a chapter or an essay or whatever it is. And so that way I can compartmentalize and just focus. Right now I'm opening up only the tab for the introduction of this chapter, and I'm working only on that until I finish it. Then I close that tab and then I go to section 1. But compartmentalizing those pieces can really help you to imagine this project as much smaller than what it really is. And just that little mental trick can really help you to focus on that one particular section, that one particular part, without having the fear of, oh my God, I'm gonna have to need to do this next section, that section, the conclusion, and then the rest of all the other things that I need to do. Again, we're trying to declutter, we're trying to narrow down our focus. And within that step, to go back to the first one about decluttering, I move my phone away from me. So one thing that I like to do is I put my phone over there on the dining table, away from my desk. I have it on vibrate mode. If somebody really needs to contact me, I'll still hear the call, or I hear the text message or the email notification, but it's away. And just having that physical distance between yourself and the thing that distracts you can already make it much more difficult to, just reach for it. And so you're much less likely to actually go for it. So by moving your phone to a different location, what I've seen other people do, one of my friends here, she will lock up her phone in her desk at the office when she's working there. So just having it in the drawer removes that kind of distraction or the temptation to check the phone. Locking it up adds an extra step of difficulty to reaching it. And so in these hyper-focused moments, right, if you're going to be doing something like a Pomodoro method, which we'll talk about in a second, in which you're dedicating a specific amount of time to the task, it's really great to remove any distractions that are going to be near you and to create obstacles between yourself and that distracting force. So even something as simple as moving the phone away from you and keeping it on your desk or in your backpack or on your bed can really help. It's a small step that makes a really big difference. The third thing that you can do is to set times within your working session to address those communication needs, to check your phone for anything urgent. So I really like to set aside specific times in which I'm going to be communicating with people. One of the biggest distracting forces for me is email. I get tons of emails every day from students, from professors, from faculty and staff, from the university itself, advertising various events, and then all the other kind of mess and garbage that, of old subscriptions and things like that I think might be important, so I check them, but really it's just, here's your letterboxed weekly update, right? Something like that. And so what I try to do is I set aside about half an hour to an hour for communication time in the beginning of the day and at the end of the day. So I check my email in the morning when I first sit down because it's a small task. It gets my brain warmed up, I do it, and I set a hard limit on that. So if I find that for some reason I need to contact a lot of people, I'll make a third blocked off time during lunch, for example. The peaks and points of the day that don't take up my best working mindset, when my brain is not at its fullest capacity and running at all horsepower. So the very early in the morning when I'm just getting warmed up, lunchtime when I'm hungry and looking over at my refrigerator, and after I've finished working for the day, somewhere between ending work and dinner time. Those are the times when I find that I like to keep up with communication. Otherwise, it'll just overrun the entire day. And every single time I switch tabs to, for example, something like Outlook, that's my brain wandering off. And so the big thing with these distractions and with going from tab to tab, and the reason why I emphasize decluttering, is that a lot of studies have shown that you might lose up to 20 or 30 minutes of deep focus every time that you switch tabs or move away, because our brains leave a little bit of thought residue with each task. As we move from one to the next, we might be physically moving to the next thing already, but our brains are still lingering a little bit and lagging behind, and maybe processing things on the back burner that we've already left. So the less time that you spend, or the fewer amounts of times that you shift from task to task, will keep you focused and keep your brain intent on solving the problem at hand. Otherwise, by moving from task to task and tab to tab, you're going to slowly leave more and more and more residue, which is why sometimes you might work for 3 or 4 hours on a bunch of different things, multitasking and checking your email, checking a news source, going back to another assignment, and at the end of the day, at the end of that work session, you might feel like you didn't get anything done. Well, that's because you haven't been zeroing in and having that laser focus on the one task, because your brain is still thinking about all those other things, and so it's not working at its maximum capacity on that one task. The next thing that I like to do, and this is related to creating those timestamps for the other kinds of tasks that aren't the main thing I'm working on, is something like the Pomodoro method. The Pomodoro method runs on 25 minutes of work with 5 minutes of rest, and you time it out. I actually like to be really strict about keeping the time that I've allotted and going until the end of that time. I don't go over and I don't go under, because for me, I personally find the 25 minutes to be too short. I feel like I actually just get into a task after about 10-15 minutes, and so I like to do about an hour or an hour and a half actually. And so by focusing for that amount of time, I'm really in the space of what I'm thinking about. But then I stop at exactly when my timer goes off. If I set the timer and it's on my phone, It's over there. So I have to walk over and I have to turn it off. This forces me to take breaks, which are incredibly important for not burning out, but it also gets you moving. And movement is one of the best breaks when you're in the middle of a working task. You shift around, you get some fresh air, you pour yourself a new cup of tea. These little breaks that don't involve further mental stimulation by, let's say I go to my phone, I turn off the timer. I'm not going to go and then go on Instagram Reels or TikTok or something like that, because that is going to leave some brain residue over there when I come back to my desk. So instead, I'll turn off the timer, I'll maybe do a few laps around my apartment, I will replenish my resources over here, and I'm going to sit back down to work. In college, my friend Joe and I used to joke, like when we would take a break and we'd go to the bathroom, that we were rewarding ourselves. But there's a little bit of a logic there, right? This is not to say that you should deny yourself going to the bathroom until you finish the task or a Pomodoro session, but that getting up and moving around can be one of the greatest rewards that you can give yourself in this moment, because it keeps you active, it doesn't add any information or kind of stimulation to your brain that takes you away from the task at hand, because your brain's still going to be processing the thing you're working on, but it also gives you a little bit of that break from that deep focus. So I like to do those hour-long sessions with 5 to 10 minute breaks, and then I go back. And I do as many of those as I feel I can sustainably complete in a day. Typically, I aim for 4 hours of really, really deeply focused work. If you do that, that is going to be an incredible amount. 4 hours is a lot when you're really zeroed in on that task. And so the next thing that I like to do is, with those breaks, I have to give myself that little bit of candy, right? I need to give myself a little bit of something that keeps me going. And so for me, I really like to exercise a little bit, or I'll play a song on the piano, or I'll play a song on the guitar. Little things that are really important to me that I like to do throughout the day and maintain a habit of doing, but that aren't going to take my mind off completely from the task at hand. So adding in those little breaks is really important. You don't want to do those 4 hours in one long stretch. You want to break it up, because eventually you're going to exhaust yourself and it's going to be diminishing returns. So the way you maintain that momentum is by breaking it up into those chunks, both the tasks and the time allotted to them, and then in breaks, doing things that are actually going to replenish your energy levels and keep you going. And the final thing, and I've already alluded to this a little bit, but anytime that I can, I like to go analog, right? When I declutter my desk and I remove all the things I don't need, I also am trying to be conscious about how much digital tech do I actually need to complete this task. And so the biggest thing that I like to do is, when I'm taking notes, when I'm going through first drafts of things, when I am writing down my ideas, if I don't absolutely have to do it on my computer, I actually try not to. And there's been numerous studies that have been published over the last 20 years that talk about the actual mental benefits of taking a pen into your hand and writing these things down. In terms of recording things for memory, for thinking through the process, for engaging different parts of your brain through the mind-hand connection and writing these things out. There's a whole lot of benefits to that, but the added one is you can't really switch tabs on your notebook. You really are stuck with this. And so I really try to, if I can, I will close my computer and I'll focus on writing things out on paper. And then once I've thought through the issues that I can, I then go to the computer and I type them out and I work from there. But this is a really great opportunity to connect with yourself and to work through your memory, work through these tasks. Of course, some things are not going to be feasible on paper and you will need to use your computer. But anytime that it's possible, I really encourage you to think of creative ways in which you can go analog. I've heard a lot of interesting advice about, even for those like Pomodoros and timekeeping methods, some things that have really helped people in the past and still is to have an actual clock I sometimes have my watch here by my planner, and to use a physical clock or something that actually shows the time that will help keep a little bit of pressure on you because you're seeing the time passing, and it also serves only that one function of the clock. If you tap your phone to check the time, you're also going to see the notifications. So by having an analog clock or a digital clock with a timer, or having an egg timer that you screw to whatever time you need, or having it just on your computer, but maybe enlarged, can be really great strategies for keeping yourself accountable, maintaining that momentum, seeing how much time you're working and how much you're resting, but also removing those distracting factors. So that's my 5-step strategy. The first one is to declutter both your desk and your computer to leave only the things that are going to help you with the task at hand. The second is to set times for communication and phone checks. So whenever you feel that you're not at your most productive, because you want to save those for the work times, but that you still might be able to dedicate the necessary attention to those communications. The third thing is to implement a strategy like a Pomodoro method or a variation of it that implements both work and rest times. The fourth is to be conscious about what you are doing during those breaks, giving yourself those little treats like taking a break and going for a little walk, or playing a song on the piano, or getting a little snack. Anything that's going to rejuvenate you but not distract you, like going on TikTok or Instagram during those breaks, and maintaining that focus. The fifth is to go analog whenever possible. So what you might be able to do on a notebook, do that instead of opening up Google Docs or Word or whatever, by really being in touch with your surroundings, with the physical environment. You're going to be much more present. Your memory is going to improve of the things that you are working through. But of course, this isn't always possible. So you might have to get creative, or you might just want to minimize how much you're actually doing on a digital device. And so by implementing any one of these strategies or a combination of them, you're going to find that over time, you're going to feel more present, not only when doing this kind of work, but also hopefully in interactions outside of that, or throughout your day. You might feel less drained, less exhausted, because you're not taking in this full stream of information that is cluttering and banging around in your head, along with those tasks that you need to do. So I hope that these strategies are helpful for you. If you end up implementing them, please let me know how that goes for you, either commenting on this episode or reaching out through DMs on any of the social media channels that I'm on, Instagram and TikTok. Or if you have your own strategies that I haven't mentioned on this episode when it comes to managing digital distraction, please leave them in a comment below.